Okay, we're looking at reducing balance depreciation now. This is the other kind of depreciation that you can use. It's more realistic because what it does is it takes into the fact that as the item gets older, the amount that it drops each year in value gets smaller. And that kind of makes sense. So if you think of a computer, the first year the computer will drop by a lot. Second year the value isn't as much, so it's not going to drop by as much, and it keeps on going down like that. The tax department wants you to use this method, and they set all the rates and things up for you, so you don't actually have to guess about it. So just looking at it in a kind of visual way, if you have an item and it's straight line depreciation, it just goes like that, straight line down to nothing. Okay, so it disappears. Now, what we're saying for reducing balance is that it might start up at the same spot, but then it might drop really steep to start with and then slowly taper off like that. And theoretically it will never actually get down to nothing. So as the time goes on, the value of it drops down and it gets down towards the bottom there. And that's kind of realistic, because if you've got something like a car that you're depreciating, you should be able to get it down to a low enough level so when you scrap it you'll get some money for it. So that's called reducing balance depreciation, and it's done using a fixed percentage. So let's have a look how you do one. So an example might be you have a car that's worth 25 grand and it depreciates by 10% each year, and you're asked to fill out a depreciation table. So if you have a look, what we've done to start with is we've got our depreciation is 0 in the first year, and our book value is 25,000, so that's how much we bought it for. After the first year it drops by 10%, because we're saying that we have a 10% depreciation. So if you work out 10% times by 25,000, you'll get the 2,500. Your cumulative depreciation is 2,500 because that's what it's dropped by, and your book value is going to be your 25,000, which is over here, take away how much it's depreciated by, which is there. Okay, so you actually do the same kind of process for the first year. Now the second year, you now find 10% of the 22,500 because that's what it's now worth. And as you can see, what's happening is it is dropping the amount it depreciates each year. So this will become 4,750, and this now will drop down to $20,250. So notice that the annual depreciation is getting smaller. So you repeat it again for the next year. 10% times by the book value, which is 20,250, and you'll get an annual depreciation of 2025. You add it onto this one here to get your cumulative depreciation, 6,775, and you take it away from the 20,250. So you go 20,250, take away 2,025, which gives you 18,225. So you can see that the book value is dropping, the cumulative depreciation is getting bigger, and if you add those two together, you will actually get the original book value. And that keeps on going. So you can see for 5 years it takes a bit of work to do. If you had a 10-year one, it'd be even longer. But there are a couple of ways which you can make it a bit shorter. So let's have a look at what this table looks like once we've filled it out for 5 years. You can see what happens is the annual depreciation goes down here and it gets smaller as time goes on. So it starts off at dropping by 2,500 the first year, and by the 5th year it's only dropping by 1,640, which is true because the value of the car is not worth that much. Once again, if you add these two together here, you'll end up with your original book value. So that's a table. Now that's quite labour intensive if you're going to have to do that in a test or something, but at least visually you can see what's going on. And if you wanted to, you could graph that. You could do your depreciation versus the time, and you'll be able to work out, or the book value versus the time, and you would get some sort of graph that would look very similar to the one that you had before, which drops like that. Okay. Now, of course, there's another way of doing it, which is a lot easier. It's just like using a formula. It's like using the compound interest formula, but in reverse because it's getting smaller. So the formula we use is book value equals original value, or the original cost, times by 1 take r to the power of n. Now r is the annual depreciation rate. So in our case, it's 10%. Okay, and our n is 12 for 12 years. So you can see over here we've already substituted it in, BV, book value, 25,000, 1 take 0.1, so you convert it to a decimal to the power of n. And then what you do is you just substitute that into your calculator. Now you should just be able to start at one side and move all the way across and not worry about the brackets or anything like that. So it should be pretty cool. So it's just 25,000, then bracket 1 take 0.1. You have to make sure it's a decimal, and then raise it to the power of 12, and you'll get 7060.74. So that means the car is now worth that much. The car is worth 7060.74 after the allotted 12 years. So it hasn't got down to nothing. If you wanted to work out how much it has depreciated, you'd get your 25,000, which is your original cost, take away your 7060.74, and it will give you how much the car has dropped in value over that time. And it's 17,939 and 26. So you can kind of get some figures there. Now, just a bit of an aside is, when you sell the car, if you want to sell the car as a business after the 12 years, you can't sell it for any more than the $7,060. Otherwise, you'll get pinged capital gains tax, because it means you're making a profit on it. Because on your books, it's meant to be worth $7,060. You can claim this depreciation every year on your profit and loss statement, and it's just an expense. So that people will use these percentages, put them as an expense, and cater for the loss of their item over the years that it's there. Cool.